Okay, hold on a second. Gotta get this, I gotta get set up here. Just making sure that I had a good Wi-Fi connection. So I can't go too far from our router, so I'm kind of in a different place today. Let's see here. See if you can see me okay. All right. It looks like I have one visitor. Wait for a couple more people. If you want to go ahead and kind of introduce yourself, let me know who's there, who's watching. Let me know if you can hear me okay. Let me know if the stream's coming through. I'm gonna adjust this a little bit here. Bear with me. All right. Trying to keep the chickens in the background there too, but anyways, I was just working on the chicken coop today. So behind me, you can see the chicken run, and the coop where they're all nesting. Bubba, okay, good deal. Right on, thanks, Bubba. So yeah, right there is their coop, or their chicken run, and then behind that is the coop. So I'm actually making a video on how I plan on redesigning it. So, and I'm going to be implementing quail this year. So yeah, it should be exciting. Just trying to figure out how to get 20. I'm going to have 23 chickens in there plus a bunch of quail. So it should be exciting. But oh, I got some visitors here. But yeah, I was going to talk to you guys about kind of the state of the economy right now. I mean, I've been listening to different economists talk about things falling apart since the last time they fell apart. But and really, not much has happened yet. That's not to say that nothing will happen, but there's definitely been a lot of just people blowing a lot of smoke, which is understanding. I mean, it's understandable because there's a lot of crazy stuff going on that should, by every standard, should have triggered, some type of economic downturn. So I'm not sure what's keeping things together right now. So the only thing I can think of, I mean, and I'm not an economist, is that it's just the perceived value of the dollar, the people's belief in the dollar and its ability to be exchanged for value. But I will tell you what I've done to kind of hedge against that. I mean, in case there is some type of downturn, because I was caught up in it in '09. I was one of the people who lost everything when the housing crash happened, and it was after that I completely changed everything about how I live and how I spend my money. And I swore that from that point on, that I was never going to get another home loan again. And the point being, not so much from a state of, I mean, obviously I had a lot of bitterness towards the banks and the way they went about basically taking my house from me. It was just extremely dishonest. But looking back, I just thought it's not a very viable situation to have your shelter, your most your most important asset, to be tied up in somebody else's hands. So From that point on, I swore that whatever home I buy, it's going to be my own. It's going to be paid off, and it didn't matter. And I knew that obviously I wasn't obviously not going to have the same home as I did. That meant I was going to have a much smaller home, because I knew I was never going to just come up with, $400,000 in cash to buy something off. So I knew that I was probably going to be looking at $50,000 homes, obviously a fixer upper, and obviously somewhere very rural. But excuse me. Anyways, that's my son there. So yeah, we got a lot of projects going on. Kind of just to change the topic real quick, but I got this chicken coop. It's mainly just trying to clean up. So I don't know if those of you who know, I've mentioned it before, I'm a painting contractor. So my slow season is in the winter, but when everything's covered with snow and frozen, I can't get much done. And then my busy season in the summer. So I have this very short window to try to get as much done as possible once the snow melts, because right now it's just early spring. It's not quite ready to start putting paint on houses, but the snow has melted, so I'm trying to get as much stuff done around here as possible. So we got fallen down trees. Our gutters got ripped off from the snow this year. So I'm trying to repair those. There's a lot of leaks in our roof. I got a lot of repairs to do on our roof. But there's just a lot of cleanup, mostly just a lot of cleanup and some repairs. Other thing I got to do this year, I got a big list of stuff here, but one of the other things I got to do is try to rethink our alternative power situation, because when living out in the rural where we're not exactly off grid. I mean, we're on a well, but we're still connected to city power, but we lose power out here at least once or twice every winter due to downed trees. And sometimes we'll be out to between 24 hours to a week sometimes without power. So having a means to keep your refrigerator going, your well pumping water, your septic pump pumping, because we're on a septic, and because the leach field is up on a hill, we do have to rely on power even for our septic. So when power goes out here, I mean, we're not in a good place. So we really need power. So the generator we ended up getting last year didn't quite cut it. When I first ran the test, when we first bought it and we got everything hooked up, it seemed to be functioning fine. I should have probably ran the test longer, but it seemed to be functioning fine. And I thought, okay, looks, everything works great. And then when the power actually went out and I had to get the generator hooked up, I started having issues with the septic. It just wasn't, I think the pump for the septic pump is just drawing too much power or something, or the frequency that it needs to run just wasn't corresponding well with this type of generators we have. So probably going to have to rethink that. Not sure what I'm going to do other than get a bigger generator, I guess. But yeah, so anyways, lots of projects I got going on here. But back to the economy thing. I know most economists will always tell you, and they'll always tell you to, you got to be wary of, like, when you're tuning into these channels, these YouTube channels that are talking about the economy, if they're trying to sell you something at the end, it's probably not going to be very good, sound like economic advice. So, and as far as the precious metals things goes, like gold and silver, I mean, I do invest a little bit into that. My thinking at the time, so like I said, like when we had that economic downturn in 09, 08, 09, and there was the real estate crash, and a lot of people lost their homes, lost their jobs, lost their retirement. I was in my 30s at the time, and I had lost my home, and I had lost everything because the advice that I was getting was so terrible. Everybody was saying, don't sell your house. Do whatever you can. It says, don't worry, things will turn around. Just do whatever you have to do to keep your house. And I took that advice and I just completely I just, um, indebted myself. I had basically, in order to do that, I was just putting off paying taxes. I was putting off um, paying all kinds of things. I was maxing out credit cards, and just to keep this house, based on this advice that things will turn around, don't worry. And as we know, things didn't turn around. Things just got progressively worse, and inevitably, I ended up losing that home, and not ha- I mean, and just becoming homeless. Not only was I homeless, but I was close to $50,000 in debt with the IRS. Plus, I had money that I took out personal loans to try to keep things going. So I had close to, oh gosh, I think it was, well, originally it was 70,000, and by the time things tanked, I think I owed like maybe 40. So I was walking away from this nothing, and not only nothing, but I was, uh, you know, 80 grand in debt. So it was a dark time, and so yeah, it was a dark time, and I was, so that just kind of got me. It was just a big slap in the face, obviously, and initially I didn't have any idea what I was going to do. It wasn't until like a year or two after it had happened I started coming across different financial advice, mainly just from Dave Ramsey, and I wasn't following his program. He was just somebody that happened to be popular on the radio because a lot of people were tuning in because a lot of people were probably in the same state that I was in, economically. So there was probably a lot of people trying to like reevaluate their economic, their way about going through life economically. So I ended up just kind of, I mean, because his program is it's pretty simple. It's just uh, lower your expenses as much as you possibly can. Um, Keep things in cash, especially when you're starting out. And for me, I didn't really have a choice because the IRS at that time was like levying my account, so I couldn't even deposit checks. So I had to cash checks. I had to get everything cashed, like third party, and it was a difficult time. I had to pay bills in person, and but when I started putting things in cash, that just totally revolutionized the way I started going about money. And I would deliberately cash my paychecks into larger denominations, larger bills, uh, to like kind of incentive, like keep me from spending it, because obviously you don't want to be going into coffee shops with $100 bills, to get coffee. And that was like, that's where I was expenditure wise. I mean, I wasn't buying coffee anymore. I think I was probably still smoking at that time, especially at that time. but, uh, but like I had cut out my coffee. I just started making my own coffee, but, stopped eating out. Um, and I cranked down. I was living out of a storage unit, and just kind of living out of my truck. And I was able in that period of time to pay off. Well, I got an offer in compromise with the IRS, and I was able to pay off my debt with the IRS. Did an offer in compromise, and then the personal loans that I had, I just started working them off. It was family loan, so I just started painting houses. And luckily, I mean, fortunately for me, I had that opportunity where I could provide a surface. I mean, and I could, they were willing to take payment in the form of work. So I was happy to do that. Like, hey, let me paint your house, let me paint whatever thing, your apartments or whatever you own, to kind of work this debt off. And that's what I did. And I was able to pay it off pretty quickly. And within about 2 or 3 years, I was able to have all that stuff paid off, and have about $30,000 saved. And that was from a pretty modest income of like maybe somewhere between, because keep in mind, the economy was still terrible, so work was still pretty slow. So to get my foot in the door, I had to lower my wages. So as a painting contractor, so you're looking at somewhere between $25 an hour to $45 an hour. And I was able to pay off all that debt and put together 30 grand just from lowering my expenses to like almost nothing. I mean, I was probably paying for everything, food, everything, by like $650 a month. So because of that, I was able to fix my situation really quick and get myself into a net positive situation pretty quick. And so I definitely encourage people to do that. I mean, I know, and one of the things, now I'm forgetting his name, but that finance guy would always say is, live like nobody else, so that something along, probably not doing this this saying very much justice, but he'd say like, live like nobody else so that in the future you can live like nobody else. Meaning that like you're gonna have to sacrifice some stuff and really practice some impulse control and like really lower the standard of your life, so that someday you can get to a place where you're living even better than everyone, than anyone else. So, and it was true. Like I mean, people were looking at me like a complete, like a total weirdo, especially living in a storage unit. I mean, I was getting some weird looks, and but and people, even once I got out of that financial place and I started paying stuff off, I was getting, I was surprised the negative response I got when I started telling people that I was going to just buy a house outright. Nobody thought that was a good idea. I don't know why. Every, I think it's just people are so conditioned in this country to just think that like having a home loan is just how you're supposed to buy a house, regardless of whether you have the money, like to buy a house. No, don't use your money to buy, all your money. You always finance your house. That just never, and I'd hear finance people say that. It must be working for the banks or something, but I can never figure that one out. But yeah, that's the advice they give. But anyways, there was a lot of advice I stopped listening to. Health advice, I mean, all kinds of things. I just completely went off script and started doing what I thought was right. I'm just trying to see here. Okay, I got some people watching. Anyways, if you just tuned in, I'm just talking about the economy, and kind of how I ended up where I ended up, and how it's benefited me, like the things I do to keep myself afloat even when things downturn economically. And I can attest to this because I knew that once I had gotten out of that state and I had paid off all my debt, I didn't have a car payment, I didn't have a house payment, I mean, no credit card payment, nothing. I started looking for a place to live, but I knew that I wasn't going to be able to stay in California. I didn't want to live there. It was just that's a whole nother show. But I knew too that if I'm going to move and I'm going to start a business somewhere else and I don't know anybody, I'm going to have to move somewhere, right? That's kind of like a very rural place where I don't know anybody. There's probably not going to be a lot of work. Then if I'm going to do that and make it work, like I'm going to have to really lower my overhead. And that's what I did. And as a result, we were able to pull it off as a family. So I was able to I was able to come to a new place, small little town, not knowing anyone, and scrape together enough money to pay the basic stuff. So because we didn't have a house payment or a car payment, the only things we needed to pay was the utilities and food. So so I'm thinking, okay, all I have to do is basically make about $1,000 a month. So that's totally doable. And so I was able to pull that off, just doing whatever, doing odd jobs, side jobs, whatever. And the longer I've been here, obviously my business has flourished a bit, although we have moved to a busier area. When we first moved here, we were living up north in a much smaller town, and then we moved south to a much busier place. And it's funny because everybody was telling me when I moved to that small town, like, oh, there's no work here. You're not, it's beautiful, but there's nothing to do. You're not going to make any money. I was busier in that small town and making more money in that tiny little town than I was in California, in the richest place in California. No kidding. Like, I was busy from the get-go, and it's because I was like one of like two painters or one of three painters at the time. So I was busy. And then when we moved down south to a much bigger area, everyone's saying, well, it's really crowded, and it's just, it's crowded and it's not as beautiful, but you will be busy. And it's been the exact opposite. And I knew that, because there's just like an ocean of painters here. So way less busy. It's been brutal trying to make a go of this place as a painter. So anyways, it's just one of those things. I'm going to have to kind of rethink my career options here because it is getting rough. I'm getting older. I've been in that trade my entire life, and I'm 48 or 47 years old, and I can't climb up and down extension ladders forever. So I'm gonna have to turn the corner here at some point and figure out another way of making a living. So, but like I said, I would say the key to winning this game, because I really do feel like what is happening economically is deliberate. I think that the people who are in control are playing a game of attrition with us. They're just slowly tapping us and just beating us until we surrender wherever they want us. And that's what I believe. I definitely don't, I'm not one of these people who think that the people who are in control are just a bunch of idiots that don't know how to run an economy. I think they know exactly what they're doing, and I think it's a plan that's been in place for a long time, and we're just watching it unfold. And these people want to see us starve. They want to see us without a home and dependent and hungry and desperate, so they can control us. It's that simple, and this group of people has been doing it since for thousands of years. So, but won't get too into that. But yeah, I don't know if you can see my chickens here. They're coming close, but I've been digging out all the dirt that kind of collected around their chicken coop, and it was just full of worms. So I don't know how these chickens even have room in their stomachs. They've been eating so many worms. But anyways, that's kind of my take on the state of the economy. I don't think I just don't think that silver and gold is where it's at. I mean, I wouldn't say don't invest in it. Like I said, I do have it, but my thinking with it was, once I was out of debt, right, and I bought my home, and I'd gotten all my my like essential my essential things like figured out and paid for and locked in and dialed in. The one thing I knew that I was probably going to have, the one issue I would have to contend with would be property tax. So if there was another economic downturn and I owed property tax, that I actually I put into silver. So the house that we were originally at, the property tax was so low. I think it was only $600 a year. So I bought 3 years worth of property tax in silver. And yeah, and I think at that time silver had just gone down because I remember when silver shot up to like $45 an ounce or something like that, and that was in 2012, something like that, 2011. And silver was just silver and gold were just skyrocketing, and then it kind of crashed in 2014 or whatever, 2013, and I was able to get. I think I bought my silver when it was at $15 an ounce, so had a little bit of a return. But obviously, it's not why we buy precious metals. It's just a way to, what do they call it? Now I forget the word. Somebody remind me in the chat. To hedge against inflation. That's what it is. There it is. To hedge against inflation. So I still have that silver, and that's what I have my silver there. My silver is just, I keep it, it's just to worst case scenario. I can fend off the property tax collectors for a couple years. And maybe that'll give me some edge, because at the end of the day, I mean, all we can really do is speculate on this stuff. I mean, nobody, a lot of people like to say that they saw that last crash coming, but they didn't. And think of how many people you've listened to, how many economic experts you've listened to in the last 5 years tell you that, oh yeah, the economy is collapsing tomorrow, like, get your stuff in order, it's coming down right now, this week. I mean, I was certain when we first moved up here in 2012, what year was it, 2014 or whatever, 2013, I was convinced, like, I couldn't get out of California fast enough, because I was convinced that it was collapsing like within that month. And so those guys, the people out there, I mean, some of them I think mean well, but I think a lot of them, they're doing people a big disservice, because it's kind of like a never cry wolf kind of a situation. Just check my camera here, but it's just kind of a never cry wolf situation, and it's kind of just burning people out, and making people feel like, you get ready and then nothing happens, and then they go, oh, this time, and then you get ready, nothing happens, and then soon people just tune out and stop listening to this stuff. And this has been always my feeling. I guarantee that things are going to collapse when nobody's expecting it. I don't think, and I've never, and I don't think in history that it's ever been that way, where there's been this huge warning that things were going to collapse, and everybody got ready, and then they collapsed, but everybody was ready. I don't think that it usually collapses when nobody's expecting it, and usually everybody's telling you it'll be fine. Read this. I moved to 500. I feel it'll be, yeah. Sorry, I have to keep going. Sometimes I can read that okay, but yeah, probably the best thing you can do, and not to say that this is going to save everybody, but is, yeah, move. I would say definitely, if you can do it, move out of the cities, get some land, move out of the urban areas, because at some point, for sure, I mean, it's just a matter of time, for sure. I mean, it's just a matter of time that things will collapse. How it will look, I don't know, but you know, what goes up must come down, so they say. So it's and I don't know what's keeping this thing together. Chickens are easy to keep. Yes, they can be. We'll see. This we started out with 12, and then we went down to 6, and I just bought 17 more. So we'll see. 21 or whatever. Um, we'll see how it is keeping them. But I'm about to introduce a ton of quail too. So we'll see how it goes. But I think the idea with chickens, or just like any type of livestock, is you just want to set yourself up and make it as easy on yourself as possible. So if you're going to build your own chicken coop, you know, make it so that just when as you're building it, always keep in mind how, yeah, I had to kill a raccoon too. Yeah, I've had to kill some critters. I killed a coyote that took 2 of my chickens. But yeah, like I said, keep in mind when you're building any type of shelter for your livestock, to just keep cleaning it in mind, because you're gonna have to clean them a lot. And yeah, Rome wasn't built in a day. You're gonna have to clean it, and the easier you make it on yourself to clean it, keep things clean, and get in there and refill their feeders, their waters, and all that stuff. That's what's going to make your life really easy. So, like, all you have to do is go in, collect your eggs, you know, and make it so that you can clean their coop and refill everything within a matter of minutes, and then you'll be happy. But there's definitely a lot to know about keeping any type of livestock, especially chickens, especially when you live out in a rural area. It's just a lot of things to consider. But like you're saying with the minks, yeah, I mean, you're going to have to get familiar with what kind of predators you're going to be contending with. Because I know, like, I have a buddy that's still in California, and they have a ton of bears. He's up in Northern California, and that's their issue is the bears come in and will get to their chickens. And I'm thinking, I don't know how I'd stop a bear. I mean, this chicken coop wouldn't stop a bear. It's heavy duty. It'd stop anything else, but I don't know how the heck you'd stop a bear from getting in and grabbing your chickens just short of like a concrete wall. So, yeah, some people have it tougher than others. But the one thing to consider too, if that is an issue, you have chickens, and especially if you want to free range your chickens, which we do, to, if you can, provide as much shelter, foliage, for them to hide in. So most of like the coyotes, which are the threat to these chickens, kind of the number one threat. Their second biggest threat are raccoons. But the raccoons only come out at night, and you know the raccoons can't get in here once it's locked up. There was one night where I had actually had an opening over here. Kind of a long story, but it had to do with introducing new chickens to old chickens. But this raccoon found his way into this little opening and got in and massacred 2 or 3 of my chickens. And but I was able to actually catch that raccoon. I snared him, and anyways, he's skinned up and hanging in my garage still. But yeah, back to the where was I talking about silver and gold? Yeah, I have some family members that are just die hard like silver and gold people. They just believe, you know, are always trying to convince me to like put all of my cash into, you know, all my assets, like transfer them all into precious metals. I'm like, man, I just don't see that as a sound idea. I mean, for one, there's no monetary exchange set up for that. So what am I supposed if I didn't have any of all I had were, yeah, Right, good for barter. Yeah, that's the way I see it. I mean, if we got to a like, there's so many assumptions you have to make to assume that. I mean, to think to accept this idea of silver and gold being the, saving the day. So many, because think of it like this: you need fuel for your vehicle. It's because I mean, unless society is completely collapsed, which I don't ever, I just don't see that happening. I just don't see that happening. I could see things getting bad and there being a lot more poor people than there are right now. But, I think at the end of the day, um, well, things will be, still obtainable. Like your basic necessities will still be attainable with some with cash or something, whatever kind of currency system they push us into. My other big worry with the silver and gold thing is what they've already done. I tend to be somebody who looks at history and just go, well, has it happened before? What was what happened the last time this happened? I mean, are there periods in time where a dollar collapsed and silver and gold became the monetary exchange? And the only response I got to that was like Weimar Germany, like in the 40s, I guess. I mean, and I don't know anything about that, but I should probably, but as far as the history goes, there's not a lot of history of that being what happens. Yeah, there's just not a lot of, evidence out there to support this idea that we're going to default to a gold and silver monetary system. I mean, for one, that would be a responsible, ethical thing to do. And I mean, has our government? You really think that our government's going to all of a sudden start doing responsible, ethical things and put us on a gold and silver standard? No, I don't see any indicator of that. If anything, they're just going to collapse the dollar and then force us and coerce us into a digital currency that we just don't have a say in. And either it's like, if you want to drink and eat, then you're going to have to get this thing. And oh yeah, by the way, for those of you who bought silver and gold, you have 60 days to turn it in and exchange it. Otherwise, it's after that time, it's going to be made illegal and it'll be punishable by prison if you're caught with possession of gold and silver, which they have done. They have made the possession of gold and silver illegal in this country, and that I could definitely see getting put back into place, especially considering the people who have invested into gold and silver, and what their relationship is with the current occupants of our government. So, yeah, I wouldn't expect things to go so smoothly as living in a world where having gold and silver is going to give you the upper hand. But, you know, but it could. Who knows? I just don't see any groundwork for it. At best, if you had some money in it, if there was a collapse and the dollar was worthless, and we were in some period where there was just no currency for a period of time, most people would just be, I think, bartering. It'd just be an exchange. People would just be trading stuff for what they have, for what they need. So, yeah, I could definitely see that happening. So, I could definitely see like bullets, ammunition being a very valuable. I could definitely see like food being valuable, especially fresh food like eggs, poultry, fish, vegetables, stuff like that. That's going to be huge because so we're in a world where people are just thriving off processed foods like bread and processed grains and stuff like that, people are going to be dealing with what's it called, like scurvy or whatever it is you get from not eating enough greens or roughage. You're just eating bread and stuff. People are going to have like major candida issues. So, yeah, access to fresh food is going to be huge. Scurvy, yeah. So that's what I see being a benefit, because not a lot of people have that. I mean, you can't eat your gold, you can't eat your silver, but you can eat your food. You can trade your food. I mean, people are always going to need food, always going to need water. Silver and gold isn't a guarantee, but food and water and shelter is. That's a guaranteed asset. No matter what happens at the end of the day, that's one thing I can honestly say, and anybody can say with 100% certainty, that we're always going to need food. So that's what my focus is on, that type of stuff. Pay off your debt, and just make sure that you have plenty of access to water, number one. Well, I would say shelter, number one, heat, then water, then food. And then the next thing would be like you're getting healthy and just having access to nutrition and supplements and medicine, stuff like that. And research it now. That's another thing. Take advantage of this time to research the information that's out there, especially the information that tells you how to make this stuff on your own. There's so many health remedies out there that you can make. Yeah, learn to hunt and fish. Yeah, the hunting and fishing thing, I mean, even right now when nobody's hunting and fishing, like it's turkey season, and it's hard to get a turkey right now. And it's like few people, like people don't even like, and coffee. People don't even like turkey. I'm like one of the few people that likes the taste of wild turkey, and it's hard to get a turkey right now. Imagine if there was an economic collapse and everybody was like, had the same idea, I'm gonna go out and shoot some food because I'm starving. The elk, deer, turkey, everything would run so far up into the mountains you'd never see them again. So I would say hunting and fishing, yes, from the standpoint if you're going, start hunting and fishing now and start procuring that food and putting it away and storing that food away. So from that standpoint, I agree, but definitely would not advise anybody to rely on hunting and fishing once everything goes to heck. Unless you're, your bug out location or wherever you're going to be when that happens is way up in the mountains where all the wildlife is going to run. Yeah, right. Yeah, very few people. Well, where I am, I would say it's more like 99% of the people do know how to hunt and fish, but you're right. Like in most of the urban areas, like in California, yeah, 99% of the people do not know how to hunt and fish. So you probably be okay surviving from hunting and fishing in California. Maybe. I don't know. But if you are going to rely on that, it was, I remember watching a prepping video a long time ago and someone saying, and you can get a lot of, I've learned a lot from that show. Not that I think that like television is like a great source of like learning much, but that show Alive, if you watch those people who survive for like a year out in the woods, the people who really do okay are the people who bring those gill nets and they can just throw a gill net in the water, because having a gill net as opposed to just relying on one, like a fishing pole and some line, a gill net is going to almost guarantee you a fish. So if you're going to kind of implement hunting or fishing into your survival, into your survival plan, I would say get yourself a gill net. Obviously, gill nets are not something. Well, yeah, they're illegal, but they are illegal now. But if it came to life and death, you would at that point it wouldn't really matter. I'd say use the gill net because we're probably, and I'm talking about, yeah, obviously in a place where things have totally broke down and you're just trying to stay alive, and there's just not going to be rule of law. Then yeah, at that point you'd be breaking laws, I guess. The laws just wouldn't matter, but yeah, so that's definitely what I would say. It's something I got to get a little more serious about, though. As far as the hunting and fishing goes, it is something that I need to start doing now while I still can, and just hopefully like this year. It's just a matter because we're still pretty new to the area, so I don't know a lot of people here. There's one kid that I know I've kind of become friends with that knows the area, especially the good elk zones around here. So hopefully I can talk him into yeah. Hopefully I can talk him to taking me and getting an elk this year, because if you are going to go out and take something, especially as large as an elk or a moose, you're going to need somebody to help you. I definitely would advise you doing that alone, especially if you're kind of new to it. I haven't really I've never went elk hunting before, really hunted anything bigger than a deer. So, and I just know for a fact if I was to take something down as big as an elk, I would definitely need help getting that processed. So, but strongly suggest, get your hunting license and get yourself a nice big freezer, box freezer, and start just packing the wildlife in there. Get an elk tag. Yeah, there's a lot of meat in elk. Although it's funny because I should probably try. I've only tried it a couple times, and both times I kind of had issues digesting it. It's just such a lean meat, so it's just hard for me to digest. But it might have just been the way they prepared it. But yeah, it's just one of those things. I mean, try to do these things now while you still have the opportunities to do it. Experiment, because yeah, I mean, try it out. Go if you know anybody that has venison or elk. I mean, see if you can taste it, because you might find out that you don't agree. It doesn't agree with you. 5 full freezers. Yeah, I only have one full freezer, and it's small. Or well, we had the main one in our house, but as far as a box freezer, it's just kind of the one downstairs. But my issue with that is that if the power does go out, I don't you'd lose all your meat, and that'd be terrible. So, but yeah, I mean, pack the freezers. See, like I was saying about the elk and stuff, go try some elk first before you go and take an elk, because you might find out that your body can't even digest it very well, because some of these wild game meats are difficult to digest. So, I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to talk about. I think I was just gonna kind of cover the chickens and the projects I have going on at the house, and then talk about the economy a little bit and tell you the sort of things I'm doing, and give you my advice, which is basically just get out of debt. I would say get out of debt. No, do whatever you can to get out of debt, and that's pretty much all I can advise. And then once you do that, then start working towards sustainability, putting together your homestead, and getting chickens, doing that stuff. But I wouldn't do any of that stuff until until the place I was like paid off, because I don't know. I can see that just being a real thing. If the economy, if anything's like the last time it happened, we had an economic crash. Um, if I wasn't prepping at the time, but if my house that I was making payments on had all my preps in it, I don't know what I would have done. I would have lost all my preps. So I mean, when I left that house, all I had were my painting tools and like clothes. I mean, I didn't have room for anything else. I couldn't afford a storage unit. I mean, I had nothing, and so I lost everything. I had to take all the furniture that was in my house and just sell it. I brought it all to my parents' house and had a big garage sale and just liquidated. I had to sell everything I everything I owned. I mean, for one, because I needed money, but two, I just didn't have the space for it. So if those were my preps, they would have been gone. So, if this economic downturn is anything like the last one, you'd lose all your preps. So so the debt thing is a serious thing. It's a subject that a lot of people don't like to talk about because it's not an easy thing to do, to pay off debt. And because for 99% of people, it's going to require you to I don't want to say downgrade, but it's gonna require you to like lower your standard of living. And that's a hard thing to do. We're so geared and conditioned and programmed to just keep adding and adding and consuming and getting more and more new stuff. And very few people know how to stop and go, you know what? I don't need this new car. And so, I wanted something that's more affordable and downgrade and get an older car. Or I don't need this big fancy house. It's costing too much money. I'm going to stop right in the middle of my, ascent into keeping up with the Joneses. I'm just going to stop and like completely downgrade my lifestyle. It's not an easy thing to do. And I get it, but it can be done, and it just comes down to how serious you are about prepping and, surviving this thing that I definitely believe is coming at some point. Do I think that like living out in the woods and having chickens and having my stuff paid off, like, is that a guaranteed thing that's going to save me? No, but it will probably, it'll be better than, I think, if anything, it'll buy me time, And I always think of this analogy, and get water store. I do have water storage. I got a lot of water here, but anyways, back to what I was saying. I always think of when I remember the movie Titanic, and I remember watching that movie, and at the end of the movie, as the ship is sinking, and I can't remember which, it was at the tip of the boat that was going down, and now I can't remember, like the bow of the boat. Is the bow of the boat the front? There's the bow and the stern. The stern is the back, right? Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But maybe in that movie, the stern of the boat, or the bow, the head, I can't remember which, was going down, and everybody was running up towards it. Okay, so the bow of the boat is the front. The bow of the boat, but everybody's running up towards that boat is sinking so fast, and everybody's just running to, doing everything they can to get to I'm just going to say the top of the boat, right? And I'm thinking, is that what really people would do? Because they all know that they're going to eventually, everybody knew that their death was inevitable. And that was kind of you remember that the guys just kept playing? That was the famous scene where the band keeps playing, because it's like, well, what else are you gonna, like, we're gonna die anyway, so you might as well just play music. There's no point in panicking. I mean, there's no point in what are you gonna do? There's no more lifeboats left. What do you do? And really, it was what people do is they cling to life as long as they can. That's the goal. You know, even if there's just whatever, you're gonna be alive 30 seconds longer than the people below. Maybe that'll give you the edge, you know, that you need. Maybe just being alive that little bit longer will give you the edge. I don't know, but that is the goal. I think is just to just stay alive as long as you can. Do everything you can to weather the storm, and stay out of it for as long as you can. And this is really, I think, at the end of the day, all we can really do is just make our own assessment based off the research we do, our own experiences, and our own ideas about things. And that's what that's pretty much the way I see it. And like I said, I'm just formatting everything, gearing it towards the last time it happened, to me. And I'm doing the things looking back that had I done that, I wouldn't have had that issue. If I had done that, that never would have happened. And at the time that happened, I mean, I was single. I didn't have any kids, so it wasn't really that big of a deal. It was just a matter of, I'd lost everything financially and had to start over, so that was depressing. But I couldn't imagine being in that position and having a wife and kids relying on me. So, so it's even more true if you have children. I'd say take care of those things, and get healthy, and that's my best advice. And then and enjoy life. And once you're at this point, I mean, I can enjoy life. I can sleep at night. I don't have to worry about not paying bills. I mean, I do have to still pay bills. I still have a lot of bills, and I do worry about. I mean, I still have to pay the utility bills, and all this other garbage that they convince us we need, like cell phones. But life is way easier. I mean, I know at the end of the day that worst case scenario, financially speaking, I'm still gonna have my home. I'm still gonna have shelter. I'm still gonna have water, and I'm still gonna have food. So it'd be rough. It's gonna be rough, especially if I didn't have power, because that would be rough. So, and most of those things are just a matter of, I don't know, getting a generator, and I can only sustain those kind of comforts for so long. But I don't know. I think we'll be okay. I mean, all honesty. And transportation, yeah, the transportation's like a whole nother subject. And I think I touched on it during the last live stream. I kind of feel like I'm just doing the last live stream I just did. The last live stream, I wanted to try to stay focused on how I got here. My ADD just doesn't very make for good live streams, because I get distracted. I start thinking about other stuff. But it's crazy. We live pretty far out here. It was like a really suspicious looking vehicle that drove by a while ago. Some creeper with like Washington plates drove by, and really slow looking. And I think he was just looking for somewhere to hunt. Well, I don't know. He had Washington plate. It was weird. Maybe he's looking for property or something. I'm not sure, but it's one of the good things about living out here is if there is like a suspicious person, like they stick out like a sore thumb. Everybody sees them. So this would be like the worst place you would ever want to come to, and try to steal stuff, because there's only one way in, one way out, and there's like a million guns between the entry point and the exit point. So yeah, not a good idea. But the downside is it takes forever to get into town. So, but yeah, as far as the transportation goes, I mean, I would say, and now, especially more so now, I mean, the amount of interactions that I've had with mechanics lately. Yeah, you always carry. I always carrying right now. Uh, the amount of interactions I've had with mechanics lately, um, I would say an older car, an older vehicle. I've been hearing some crazy stories about like these newer vehicles. I mean, not only are they more expensive, but they're obviously you're paying more over MSRP, but they're harder to work on. Which means they're more expensive to work on. Yeah, this is a M&P Shield, but they're harder to get parts, harder to obtain parts. So something goes wrong with one of those vehicles, I mean, you're stuck unless you have a backup vehicle. But definitely some I would suggest if you can afford it, get yourself a if you're going to get yourself a backup vehicle, make it an older one. Something like at least 20 years older. I mean, it doesn't have to be like decrepitly old, but get something older that's and something that's easy to work on that parts are like readily available for. So, any of the old Chevy trucks, GMC trucks, Chevy Tahoes, um, the old Chevy Tahoes. They're just such good vehicles. Those motors will go forever. You end up having to kind of replace everything periodically for the most part, but I don't know. Like in the last 10 years since I've owned my truck, I mean, I've had to replace the transmission. I've probably done maybe, I don't know, $20,000 in repairs for that truck, but I only paid $8,000 for that truck. So yeah, it all works. It all works out. And I had 28,000. I've had the truck for forever. Um, um, but yeah, get yourself an older vehicle that's easy to work on. Learn how to work on your vehicles. Make sure that the parts are readily available, and that's another good thing that you can speaking of bartering, I would say that skill, like skills, you can barter for skills. So develop a skill, and that way that will really give you an edge. If you have a skill that everybody needs, such as like working on cars, you'll be fine. Or a skill like being a doctor, like a nurse, like somebody that can help you medically. That's just invaluable, and as long as you have a skill like that, you should be okay. Um, Painters like myself probably not going to do very well during an economic downturn. uh, yeah, not many people looking to change the color of their house when all hell's broken loose. It's kind of the last thing on their mind. Uh, so yeah, yeah. Learn. Develop a skill that is like a valuable skill, like auto work, or I'm trying to think of other ones other than that. I mean, just growing food, attaining food. I think is huge. I tell you, like growing a garden, learn how to grow a garden, and then because that's something that takes years. The knowledge, especially if you've figured it out for your region, so you can help the people around you learn how to do that. So yeah. Anyways, I kind of feel like I'm recapping on all the stuff that I talked about during my last live stream. So if there's any other topics out there, butcher. I thought you were gonna say bartender. Bartender. Learn how to make drinks. Yeah, fixing things, right? Yeah, you're gonna have to learn how to fix critical things like learn how to do electrical. But I think worst case scenario, people will, if they just need to build a wall, they'll probably take it on themselves. But try to learn like a you know a what do they call it, like a military. Yeah, yeah, I watch a lot of videos. I mean, of these guys that are like ex-military. uh I mean, they learn survival. But most of the stuff like people learn in the military is geared towards fighting wars, stuff like that. So even though, I mean, hopefully we don't get to a place where we're fighting wars, but you know, um, but if we were, then yeah, you'd have to try to like find somebody that knew basic military tactics. I'm not in the military. A lot of people think I'm military, and I must have that look because my hair is short or something. I have a kind of a military look, but I'm not military. I was gonna go into the military. I was all about like becoming a marine, becoming a marine when I was a kid. I mean, all my whole life. My grandfather, my grandfather, my dad's side was uh, uh, trying to think. Was he in the Air Force? He flew. I think he may have been in the Army. He wasn't a Marine, but he was in the. I think he was in the Army, but he flew planes. He flew the bombers, and He had some crazy stories. He passed away, but he was actually on his way to like drop a huge bomb in Japan right when the war was called off. So they were like probably 10 minutes away from their target. And then they got a call that the war was over and they turned around. And my other grandfather, who was in the Marines, I'm not sure if he actually saw any combat. He never brought it up. Yeah, Army Air Corps, it's probably what he was. I wish, it's one of those things. I mean, that generation is pretty much gone now. So, the stories, hopefully there's a lot of you took advantage of that time. I mean, I did talk to my grandfather a lot before he passed about stuff like that. But that generation is the silent generation. They just didn't talk. They didn't talk too much about that stuff. But both my grandfathers were really into boating, like sailboats and boats. That was kind of the thing back then, and especially like in the 50s, it was really cool. And that and like the small aircraft stuff, it was really popular back in the 50s. But yeah, both my grandfathers were really into boats. But yeah, like I was saying, I'm getting distracted again. But yeah, I was super into the military. But by the time I got into high school, I was in so much trouble uh, that, I mean, there were a lot of things that would have kept me out. But I think but I did have like a recruitment officer that I was working with, and I remember him calling me like on my 18th. No, he called me right when I graduated high school, but I had ended up getting in this really bad car accident in my senior year in high school. I was drinking and crashed into a tree and took my kneecap clean off. I hit a tree at like 50 miles an hour, or what was it? Maybe like 40 miles an hour. Took my kneecap clean off. So I'm still haven't fully recovered from that. That was 30 years ago. But yeah, and even if that hadn't happened, I probably wouldn't have gone in. And it wasn't my thing. It was kind of weird that I was even in this. I'm even in this avenue because my parents are such like, not like libs, but they're like they're like old 60, baby boomer like hippies, you know. not like hardcore hippies, but pretty hippie. I mean, my dad was like driving a Volkswagen bus, long hair, and like little stupid round glasses that they wore, and so yeah, my dad's kind of fun, a weird guy. We're total opposites. Um, and he's just his life is about working, and my life is about prepping. So, but we get along. I think we have a similar sense of humor, and but anyways, I don't know what else to talk about. If there's anything else you guys want to talk about, pretty much just end this live stream. 'Cause I feel like I'm just reiterating what I did on the last one. I kind of wanted to stay focused on the economy, but not really much to say other than I would say, than stuff that you already know. So, unless there's something else, any questions you have, let me know in the comment section. Otherwise, I mean, subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and hit the like button. We do have a merch store now. I have a merch store, so I sell like coffee mugs and stuff like that. But it does help me out. Okay, he did good. Thank you, thank you. So yeah, it does help me out, and hopefully this is maybe something I can at some point, turn, maybe not paint and just do this full time in 20 years from now. I don't know. You definitely don't make much money like in the first few years of YouTube. So there's no money, and it's just a labor of love. But I do enjoy doing it. The live streams I'm getting a little more comfortable with doing. So I'll try to keep these going. But anyways, guys, thanks for joining me. And until the next one, stay prepared.